This episode of the Driving Safety Show is sponsored by Drivers Alert, celebrating 30 years of helping companies keep their drivers safe. To learn more, visit driversalert.com. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving. You want safer roads, and so do we. You're listening to the Driving Safety Show. Hear insights, in-depth analysis, and expert advice from key players in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors who are leading the way in making our roads safer. Are you ready to join us? And now, your host of the Driving Safety Show, Rich Sordahl.
Welcome to another episode of the Driving Safety Show. Our guest today is Chen. He's the co-founder of LifeSaver Mobile, a Silicon Valley-based tech company that has created an app designed to combat the epidemic of distracted driving. Ted holds a bachelor's degree in business from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, as well as a law degree also from Penn. Ted, thanks for joining us today.
Rich, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
And Ted, looking back at your experience, you have this incredible background in the tech industry, working at Yahoo and AOL and so forth. So how did you get started in the tech industry?
Well, I'm originally from the East Coast. About 20 years ago, I decided I needed to be out here in Silicon Valley, really just to be part of this hotbed of technology. And it was a great time to come out with the birth of all the companies that were starting to focus on the internet as the main, business model.
And at what point did you decide you were going to go out on your own and make a switch into this fight against distracted driving?
Yeah, that was about 6 years ago. We started looking at trying to do our own thing, and my co-founder Mike Demley and I, we were looking to solve, as everyone wants to do when they're starting, their own thing, solve a problem that's really near and dear to our hearts, and something that was really relevant to a lot of people. And so we decided to solve distracted driving. And the trigger behind that was, we decided because our eldest kids were starting to drive and starting to get their licenses, and we were just terrified that they were going to use their phones in the car. So it was a very personal problem as well.
Looking again back at your LinkedIn profile, you have this statistic on here. You mentioned that over 25% of auto collisions in the U.S. are related to distracted driving, and that translates into more than $33 billion, that's billion with a B, in insurance claims each year. That's an incredible statistic.
It's amazing. It's killing obviously the insurance industry. They're losing money on commercial, on both personal auto and commercial auto. They're losing money every single year, and they really care strongly about this problem, and they're desperate to find ways to solve it as well, and as much as their policyholders are as well.
And you're talking to insurance companies all the time. What's their sentiment? What are they saying?
Yeah, so there's two ways to make money, right? For them, they can either raise the prices or they can lower the claims, and they've continued to try to raise prices over and over again, but they can't catch up to the cost of the claims. So they've decided that they need to really tackle the claim side. And the claim side is really in terms of the number one cause of vehicle collisions out there, we're hearing from insurance companies that phone usage is that number one cause. It's causing, as you said, reading from my LinkedIn, 25% or more of all the collisions out there on the roadways today. I think if you talk anecdotally to those carriers, those insurance companies, they'll tell you it's more like 50% because, a lot of things go underreported. And so it's, the 25 is really an official number, but there's all this, room for underreporting.
Yeah. In our last episode, we were talking to an officer in the San Diego area, and he was mentioning the same thing. It's a very difficult task. In that particular context, we were asking, well, what happens in the event of an accident? You go through the accident investigation. How do you determine what some of those contributing causes to the accident were? And of course, he says that, who's going to really admit they were on their phone? So
Exactly.
It's a difficult thing to isolate.
A very difficult problem to enforce. In fact, as you think about a lot of the different things that are being done today to help solve this epidemic, which it's recognized officially as an epidemic now. It's legislation, of course. Legislation continues to get stronger and stronger every year. Enforcement, which we just talked about, is very difficult to do because if you have that phone in your lap, it's very hard to catch that. And then, of course, awareness campaigns, things like today's interview is good to get the word out to people. And, of course, technology, right? Technology is the piece. And we always talk about this as a problem that was born by technology that really needs to be solved, at least substantially, by technology as well.
And Ted, you living out in California, I mean, just anecdotally, you're out on the roads and you see things going on firsthand. I mean, I know they have a hands-free law in California, but are you still seeing a lot of people personally, driving with their phones and texting?
Yeah, I would say that California is not unique. I would say that my experience is probably one shared by everyone across the United States. Every single day, I will guarantee you on my commute back and forth to work, I can find at least one or two drivers that if I look back and forth. Number one, certainly at the stoplights and even more dangerously on the highways, which is scary, right?
Now, in LifeSaver Mobile app, now you got your start in the consumer market, but then you transitioned into fleets, correct?
That's correct.
So what is the how does this technology then work? Maybe you can kind of help us with that just by starting in just the basics. How does this work in helping to combat distracted driving?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about the transition, and then we'll talk about the product. So yes, correct. We started with the consumer solution, and then consumers loved the app. We got a lot of media attention because of it, because it's such a high-profile problem, and it's grown to be even more over the years. And then a few years in, fleets around the country started noticing our app and trying it out, and they said, "We love your app. Help us build a way to deploy and manage the app for many hundreds of drivers at scale, and we'll become your first customer." So that's kind of how we got into the commercial, the fleet side of things. As far as the product's actually fairly similar across both audiences in terms of just the piece part. So number one, the app is the same. It's the one app, both iPhone and Android, available in both stores, and then both are potentially managed by a portal, right? So on the consumer side, we have a light consumery type portal. On the fleet side, we have an enterprise grade fleet portal that can manage hundreds, if not thousands, of drivers. So just to kind of recap, it's an app plus the portal, which is 100% software solution. So there's no hardware required. And that's a huge advantage for us in that most people don't want to figure out how to purchase and install and maintain a piece of hardware. So the way it works, very simply, is the app teaches the new driving behavior, and the portal provides the accountability for enforcement, the reporting, compliance, deployment, all that happens through the portal. The way that this new driving behavior, what we're teaching is do not manipulate your phone behind the wheel as you're driving. So that means hands-free is okay, voice is okay, but do not look at your screen, do not touch your screen. And that's the driving behavior we're encouraging. So it's really, and the way we do that is through visual and visual intervention at the time that attempt is made. And by doing that, you're basically blocked from using the phone so that you quickly learn that you have to go hands-free if you really want to do something with your phone.
And what about the administrative piece? How does that work? So there's notifications that get sent to a safety manager or somebody at the company who's responsible for managing the fleet?
Yes. So accountability is a very, very important aspect of the product. Without accountability, then a driver can do whatever they want, right? As you know, technology can be gamed and it's easily kind of circumvented. And so you have to have that person kind of looking at the portal or at the reporting that comes from the portal to make sure that people are using the product consistently. The app itself is capturing any sort of violations or phone events and reporting them to whoever the list of people that are getting the reports. It can be the overall fleet administrator. It can be your group leader, your foreman in a fleet use case. Obviously, in a consumer situation, it's most likely the parent of a team would get that report. We found that reporting gets too noisy if it comes more than once a day. So we typically have once a day reporting. It's all configurable, of course, and it tells you what that driver had in terms of phone events during the previous day. So I don't know, yeah. And then there's a scoring for each and every driver, as well as for groups of drivers. And so you can sort of objectively measure now how safe your driver or group of drivers is, or team of drivers is, and take appropriate action, whether it's rewards or some sort of I need to speak with you in order to coach you up to make sure that you're doing better in the future, whatever corrective action needs to happen or incentive reward action that needs to happen.
So just so I understand, to be clear, so the device, your phone, does not get necessarily turned off when the vehicle's moving, or can you override that if necessary?
That's right. So no, it's not turned off as in a black screen that you have to power up again. What it does is it's a visual intervention blocking the screen so that it can't be used as you're moving at driving speed. So if I'm driving along and I haven't touched my screen, of course it will stay dark. As soon as I try to passcode unlock my phone, LifeSaver will wake up to block that screen or visually intervene so that the driver knows, number one, they can't do it, or number two, if they're trying to do it, they're being recorded for a violation that gets reported to their boss.
Okay. What about the one issue I hear about quite a bit is the bring your own device problem. So, if you have a fleet and you want everybody to use your phone, people still are going to bring their personal phone. How do you combat that?
Well, it is a loophole. Unless you know about that phone, you can't insist that LifeSaver be installed on it. There are ways that we think so we have a lot of fleets in our customer base, and I would say less than half of them are bring your own device fleets. In those situations, they've been pretty successful at getting LifeSaver installed on the personal phone through a variety of approaches. One, they can, if they're already reimbursing for kind of the monthly cell phone service, the monthly bill for that personal device, which oftentimes, if that's the only device, then they'll be reimbursing. Then you can make participation in LifeSaver a contingency for continuing to get that reimbursement. If you're not reimbursing, of course, you wouldn't start something like that. The second thing that we have, it's a very popular feature in the portal that I mentioned to you earlier, is that we have a feature for hours of operation so that you can set LifeSaver hours operation for normal business hours or whatever hours that driver is working, and then LifeSaver the app will automatically snooze during off hours and then be operational during normal business hours. And that way you sort of overcome the objection from the employee that, hey, I don't want this thing on my phone all the time. Well, it's not. It's actually going to go to sleep after hours. So that's another way to overcome the BYOD objection. And the third way that we've heard some of our fleets starting to do to use as an argument to overcome this objection is, hey, you know what? We want to all be in this game together. We want to motivate each other to be as safe as possible. So to that end, we're going to announce, we're going to put a policy in place where, if you're at fault for an at-fault collision in a company vehicle, you're going to be responsible for a certain, dollar amount or percentage of that at-fault collision. But if you enroll yourself in LifeSaver, and yet that phone in LifeSaver, we will waive that responsibility because you're showing us that you're actually as interested as we are in protecting yourself and the company assets.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
What makes LifeSaver different? There are others out there in this space. What would you say differentiates you?
Yeah, I think there are kind of two or three different things. One is so there's the broader fleet safety spectrum, if you will, and we actually don't. We're very much a supporter of the fact that you need to take a portfolio approach to fleet safety. There's no silver bullet, one-stop solution for fleet safety. Every fleet out there should be looking for different solutions kind of to complement each other. And so in that area of different categories, there's dash cams, there's telematics, there's cell blocking, online training, and motor vehicle records. All that stuff has to come together in a cohesive approach, right? But I think where we stand out as a company and as a category is, number one, cell phone blocking is very much a preventive thing, right? So it's proactive. It solves the problem before it starts. And that's a huge thing because, as we've heard from a lot of fleets these days, they don't want to spend a lot of time coaching their drivers, especially with telematics products. They're all about, their original intention is, asset tracking and fuel consumption around optimization. And then safety has been sort of a recent thing for them as well. And they capture a lot of great data. But the problem or the issue from the fleet side of it is that they don't really have the time or the bandwidth to go through reams of data, try to figure out who needs to be coached and to go and do that coaching. And so that's where kind of we excel, is we're tackling that number one cause of collisions. So it's super impactful from a safety perspective. And number two, we're proactive, so we're solving the problem before it becomes a problem. And so I think those are two major sort of differentiators. The third one that I'll add to the list is we're software only, right? So as I said earlier, an app plus a portal, pure software solution doesn't. So it's very complementary to anything you already have in place, whether it's dash cams or telematics. Will just play really nicely with whatever you have. And then, of course, with software only, we can be very cost effective as well.
Right. No boxes, no dongles, no cables.
That's right. That's right.
What about the pricing model for fleets? It's a pretty straightforward approach, correct?
Very straightforward. We're software as a service. So we're annual subscription based, and we charge a range anywhere from $60 to $120 per phone per year, depending on the number of vehicles or phones in your fleet.
Now, I understand you've worked with JC Good in the past with spreading the word about distracted driving, and JC was on our podcast several episodes ago. And for those who are not familiar with her story, over 10 years ago, she was involved in a very serious accident where her parents were killed, and JC herself spent a lot of time in the hospital recuperating, and almost lost her life as well. But she goes around the country and speaks on the topic, trying to raise awareness, and she really is the face of it. But she also talks about the LifeSaver. I see the LifeSaver app is on their website, Hang Up and Drive. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your work with JC.
Sure. First off, we love JC. Her message, her advocacy is so powerful, and we met her very early on. As I said, we started as a consumer solution, and so in those early days as a consumer-focused company, we started to meet a lot of the sort of the most powerful voices in this fight against distracted driving, and we met them very quickly because of, as I said, we got a lot of media attention, and of course these advocates do as well. So we started to meet each other at all these different events, and we decided that we wanted to start partnering with some of these some of these powerful advocates like JC. She actually has been out to the Bay Area a couple times and one of them was for us in one of our kind of local consumer awareness events, and she was the speaker at a distracted driving awareness event at a San Jose Earthquake soccer game, and we had her speak to a big group there, and it was super powerful. I just can't say enough about that.
Yeah, it really does. I think the message resonates pretty well when you see somebody who's personally involved in a situation like that. I think people definitely they listen. Your website, LifeSaver-app.com, you talk about cell phone policies for fleets. What do you recommend a cell phone policy should look like? What should be some components of that policy?
Yeah, sure. So obviously this is fleets can do. There's basically two things they should be sort of doing as table stakes in order to solve this problem. And one is you need a strong policy. You need a strong cell phone policy. A lot of companies have fleet policies, but they don't get as specific as a cell phone policy, and they probably should. What's good? What they need to have in a strong cell phone policy is to cover the following. They should cover sort of all employees, of course, all handheld and hands-free devices, all mobile devices, basically, whether they're company-owned or personal, and as far as they are used in a company vehicle, right? So obviously, in the context of a company vehicle. And then the final thing that they definitely need to cover, which a lot of times this is a kind of an oversight, is it needs to cover any work communications, any work-related communications, and that could be anywhere. So it could be in a personal vehicle, it could be in a work vehicle, it could be on a personal phone or a work phone. If it's work-related communications and something should happen, God forbid, the company could be at risk. And so having that last piece at least gives you a leg to stand on in the event that something should happen. And then, of course, the corollary to that is a policy without any enforcement becomes toothless, and you could certainly be looked at from a litigation standpoint as negligent if you have a great policy but you don't enforce it. So with any policy, you need strong enforcement, and that comes through technology.
Now, something fascinating I found on your website, Ted, you have this Find the Offenders map. And I thought that was really interesting, where you have plotted the texting while driving offenses around the country with time and date stamps.
Right.
Is that something that you've used for a while now, or is this more of a recent innovation?
No, it's been there on our website for a long time. This was the map was our way of letting non-drivers become part of the solution, right? So, when I saw people on the roadways, and I saw a lot of other people feel the same way as me, and they were like, they get really frustrated and like, I wish I could do something about it. I wish I could bring more awareness to the problem, because it's so annoying to see other people on their phones and not driving, safely. And so this was our way of letting those non-drivers become part of the solution by tagging others anonymously, of course, if they saw them on their phones. It's kind of like a heat map for distracted driving. So it really just tells you where some of the worst areas in the country are in terms of phone usage.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of like the "How's my driving" calls, the 1-800 "How am I driving?" But it's for texting. That's interesting.
That's right.
So Ted, looking back now on the 6 years or so that you've been marketing your LifeSaver app, what would you say that you have learned personally about the whole phenomenon of distracted driving?
Yeah. So I think there are, several big takeaways. One is, unfortunately, I think it will take some time to solve, just like seatbelts took some time to solve. I think it'll move much faster than that because technology is in play here. I think it takes a combination of a lot of different things to change the behavior, societal behavior around this. And we talked a little about some of these earlier, like legislation, enforcement, awareness, and awareness campaigns, and then technology. I think they all need to be part of the solution. I think that there needs to be a stigma around distracted driving the way drunk driving has that same stigma. In fact, if you look at, we were close to the Mothers Against Drunk Driving folks for a long time in our early days as we were doing the consumer stuff, and we learned that it took a while. It took them 30 years to get a big improvement in the drunk driving stats. I think it's fallen by more than half in 30 years. But what we have here is we have the advantage of the playbook that they have, and we also have the advantage of technology. And not that they don't have some technology as well, but I think our technology can really solve this problem in a much faster way. But the stigma has to be there in order for people to start thinking about it differently. And then the final thing I would say, just to add in terms of learnings, is it's not like we're bad people if we do it. No one wants to do it, but we are addicted. There's a science behind it that tells us that we're programmed to respond to the dopamine rush that comes from the ping of these notifications. And that's really I say all that because I think it's really important to realize that there is a science there, and that in order to overcome that, sometimes we need help, and technology can be that help.
Yeah, exactly. So as we're closing in on our allotted time, what is on the horizon for LifeSaver Mobile?
Yeah, I think number one, we're going to continue to partner with as many relevant distribution channels as possible to get to as many drivers as possible wherever they are. Right? We're obviously, from a business standpoint, we focus on commercial, but we want to be able to get to as many drivers, whether they're commercial or family drivers. I think one way to think about this problem is, and what we think could happen is, most commercial drivers have families, right? And if we can change their behavior at work, we have a shot with changing their behavior at home and with their family members. And just to quote our company slogan, it's all about changing the culture of distracted driving. So if we can start with the place where the product is most effective from an accountability standpoint, which is that commercial context, then we can hopefully change it across their families as well.
And you have plans to be at the National Safety Council's annual Congress in September in San Diego too, correct?
That's right, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys as well there. And then we also are going to be at the Fleet Safety Conference in Las Vegas in October. And then we're probably going to be at NAFA, which is the National Association of Fleet Administrators, in the spring of 2019. So it's a lot of stuff going on there. There's this ton of events to choose from. So we have to pick and choose wisely, as I'm sure you guys do. But we're really excited about being at these events.
So Ted, how can people learn more about what you're doing?
Well, it's easy to find us, and I'll give a different URL, which is easier to remember, which is lifesavermobile.com. So very easy. It will get you straight to our website. We have obviously we have all our social media: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that stuff. And our phone number is really very easy to reach as well, and very easy to remember. 833. So toll-free number 833-DONT. Don't text, TXT. So 833 don't text. And of course, all our information is on the website as well, lifesavermobile.com.
Okay, great. And before we go, Ted, any parting message related to distracted driving you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, let's see. So for the consumers, I'd love for the parents to please set a good example for your kids. They're coming up and they're learning our behavior. They just see it, right? If you're sneaking a text, they're going to sneak a text. So that's a huge way to change that culture. And then of course we talked about needing help to avoid the urge to answer that ping. I think technology can help with both prevention and accountability. And then the last thing I think is, it's not all or nothing. I think people freak out when they think about, oh, well, my phone's going to be in jail and I'm going to be in this total non-communication mode during the drive. I think that's the best. I think that would be great if everyone could do that. But I think just being practical about it, I think using Bluetooth systems or headsets, if you have to communicate, is less scary for a lot of people. And at the same time, you become a lot more safer. So I think it's, just learning to kind of work with your phone in a much safer way can be a huge win for everyone to kind of just become safer along that safety spectrum.
Great message. Ted, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And look, big congratulations to you for putting all this effort and your brain power in trying to make a difference in keeping our roads safer. We need more people like you. So you got a big thumbs up from me.
Thanks, Rich. And I really appreciate the opportunity to spread the word. And we look forward to seeing you and working with you guys in the future.
Same here. Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
Once again, that was Ted Chen, the co-founder of LifeSaver Mobile, a Silicon Valley-based tech company that is dedicated to eliminating the epidemic of distracted driving through technology. Please share this podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers and help us raise awareness about critical driving safety issues. 40,000 people die on America's roads every year, 1.25 million worldwide. That's just unacceptable. Until next time, please drive safely and put your phone down.
You've been listening to the Driving Safety Show. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, visit driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. There you can sign up for episode notifications, listen to past episodes, and even request to be a guest on the show. And don't forget, the Driving Safety Show is the show that features the movers and shakers who are working hard to make our roads safer. See you next time.